and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, today we are discussing, our focus is going to be on the BJP. They just had a national executive. And we also heard Amit Shah, the Home Minister, announce that the BJP is really here to stay for the next 3-4 decades. I mean, no surprises there. That's really the way the politics are going. But what will the next 3-4 decades look like? Will India emerge as a Vishwa Guru, as we were heard at the national executive? Will there be end to the politics of Jativad? Will there be an end to the politics of appeasement? What is the governance and the political roadmap of the BJP in the coming 3-4 decades? Because really, that's going to be the party that's calling the shots. Joining me on the show to discuss this is Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. He is a journalist, author, biographer of, he's written a book on Prime Minister Modi. He's written a book on the politics of demolition and one on the RSS. We have Sandeep Ghosh. He's a political commentator. He's also a columnist and someone who's a familiar face now on the Roundtable. And Neerja Chaudhary, columnist, commentator, and senior journalist. Nilanjan, where do you see the next 3 decades going? No arguments. It is the decade of the BJP. But where is it headed? What kind of governance do we see ahead?
Well, it definitely is the decade of the BJP. Now, the things that you were listing, that is all this going to happen? You said that, will India become a Vishwa Guru? No, we will not become a Vishwa Guru. We have several, we are deficient on several fronts. Will Jativad go? No, it will not go. Every political party looks at the caste factor, even while accusing the others of using the caste. And so on and so on. Religion is not going to go away anywhere from this. So all the bad things that have been, which have been part of the Indian politics for the last 3.5-4 decades, at least, that we have been in journalism, they are going to continue in some form or the other, maybe some slightly less, maybe some slightly more. There will be periods when there will be highs, there will be periods when there are lows. So all that is going to continue. Now, the two main takeaways which were there from the National Executive meeting, one, of course, is what you said, is the Union Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah's statement that BJP is going to rule for the next 30-40 years at least. So that's one statement. The other is the statement which came from, reportedly came from Prime Minister Modi in his address to the members of the National Executive, that there must be a conscious effort to reach out to the minorities. He used the word specifically that we must take out Sneha Yatras, and also there have been stories that they are intending to try to reach out to the Pasmanda Muslims, which is the OBCs among the Muslims. Now, there is one, fundamental problem, which I feel, for the BJP, which it has not been able to resolve in the last 8 years that it has been in power. It has not been able to resolve the conflict and the contradiction between the imperatives of governance and the imperatives of politics. The imperatives of politics is not Sneha Yatra, but the Shobha Yatras. I'm using Shobha Yatra as a metaphor, for the kind of politics that we have actually seen since December onwards, December 2021 onward, the hate speeches, Ram Navami, the temple corridor, Uttar Pradesh elections, all that, that has been seen. So I'm putting it together in one, the kind of politics which is essentially calling out the minority, pointing fingers to them, saying that we have essentially the message going out, the dog whistle being sounded, that we have actually sorted out the Muslim belligerents, which is what gets them the support of them. Now, this kind of politics is actually, it pulls down the governance imperatives for various reasons, including increasing political risk, reducing investment, and overall generally creating a bad climate for business. So I think, that this is, I am not very sure I would want as an Indian that the BJP is able to resolve this, because having written on Mr. Modi significantly, I know that if he actually wishes to deliver on governance, he can deliver also. But this marginalization of the religious minorities, on politics has to be diluted. It is true that none of the so-called welfare measures are, the minorities are excluded from it. But from politics, there is a huge amount of targeting which pulls down the entire system down.
Sandeep, your reaction to what Nilanjan has just said also?
See, Priya, first of all, I don't take a lot of it as, as literally when Amit Shah says about Vishwa Guru or 3 or 4 decades. I take it much more metaphorically. And at the same time, therefore, I do not take very extreme views on the way your Nanjan is projecting. Because I think politics at the end of the day is really a function of how society evolves, how there are various other factors which finally dictate, how a political party is going to react. And it is, nobody operates in a vacuum. We have to really see how the politics of future, pans out. So there may be a BJP at the national level, but if the regional parties, if they become more dominant, the identity-based parties, that will have its own reactions on how BJP behaves going forward. But I think first of all, what Amit Shah has been saying is that I think that's a kind of given. One doesn't, the way Congress is going, you really don't see another national party, for good or for bad. I don't say that they are going to always rule at the center. Whether really a national party emerging in the near future. So BJP will probably continue to dominate this pan-Indian space. And there you have to see what BJP's strategy is. Like, we may go on criticizing what it ought not to do, but it is very clear in terms of where it wants to get at. So right now, you see, while we are all stuck in Maharashtra, Narendra Modi and Amit Shah are clearly moving southwards from Telangana to Andhra, and they're beginning to inch towards Tamil Nadu and everywhere else. So they are moving in that direction. Whether they succeed or how soon they move in is a different point, but that is the direction. Second point, which I feel is, they're very now overtly going in for the consolidation of Hindu votes, because they want to get away from that phenomena which, Prashant Kishore used to say, that even in Hindu votes, they only manage to get 70%, 30% still goes the other way. I think they want to increase that number so that there is lesser division of the Hindu votes. So those are strategies which they are adopting. And finally, what Nilanjan says in terms of governance, in terms of investment climate, rightly or wrongly, perhaps Mr. Modi thinks some of those, the fallouts or negative fallouts can be neutralized or countered by better governance, better systems, providing better infrastructure and the rest of it, which might to some extent offset, even if there is some governance deficit on the other side. So they are moving with a plan and a strategy, and it would be, I think, incorrect to discount it totally and focus on things like, whether Mr. Modi is speaking with the help of teleprompters or speaks directly, or whether it is, Devendra Fadnavis who's controlling Maharashtra or not. It's fairly, you must see it holistically.
I saw your tweet also on that, and I do concur with you. But Neeta, there is also a larger political game at play here. They're saying that Amit Shah wants to beat Rajiv Gandhi's record of over 400 votes. He's also aiming towards that. So hence all this rhetoric and this whipping up the right political statements.
For any party, it's always good to hold out, high goals before it's harder. And at a time when the BJP is on a high, and the opposition is on a low after Maharashtra. The loss of Maharashtra, I think has not fully sunk in, because it is not only a big state, it's not only the financial hub that they wanted to recapture, it also had an experiment going on quite successfully of parties coming together, even ideologically different, and yet making a go of it in terms of governance. For that experiment to collapse is bad news for the Congress, for the opposition, the entire opposition grouping. So yes, Amit Shah, whether it's 30, 40 years, whether it's 5, 10 years, certainly in the foreseeable future, we see the BJP certainly coming back in 24, unless dramatic things happen in between. Of course, we can never rule that out, whether it's nationally or internationally. But having said that, as things stand today, it's going their way. And I think in terms of strategy, two things have become very clear after Hyderabad and Maharashtra. One, that they think the Congress is an over story. They don't need now to worry about it. And after this Kanhaiya's death, the tailor's death in Udaipur, If you talk to people in Rajasthan, they say 2023 is a given now for BJP, because large number of people, there have been demonstrations that as we've seen, a large number of people feel if there's a party that can protect us, particularly the Hindus feel this, then it is the BJP is going their way with that one event. Of course, as I say, you can never say that anything definitively, but as of today. So Congress is an over thing. They don't need to worry about it. They will put Rahul Gandhi's face there as opposed to Modi and get benefit out of it. But the parties that they now are seriously targeting are the regional parties. And that is the reason why they targeted the Shiv Sena. Today, the Shiv Sena is divided, weakened. Now they set their eyes on TRS, Telangana Rashtra Samiti in Telangana, and they will, increase their footprints elsewhere also. So I think because those are the parties that are giving them a fight at the state level. Those are the parties they're going to target. Will the Maharashtra experiment, which is to break one of those state parties, form a government with it, weaken it, is that the kind of experiment they will go for in Telangana, in Andhra, maybe a little later stage in Odisha and other states of India? West Bengal, they certainly have on their radar. So I think given all that, and just one final thing, which the other panelists have also referred to, there seems to be a strategy now also to divide the Muslims. There has been serious thinking going on in the RSS that the way the Muslims voted so unitedly in the West Bengal election was a thing to worry about. And I think the note that the Prime Minister struck, on the one hand, inclusive, go for harmony, make sure that all communities, the poor amongst all communities, are labharthis and get the benefit of our programs. And mentioning Pasmanda Muslims, so those are the backward Muslims. So I think overall there seems to be a strategy, divide the Muslims, Shia Sunni anyways there, divide. And be in a way a group or groups from there towards our side. So yet at the same time, it's not that they're toning down the Hindutva rhetoric, because the renaming of Hyderabad, all those things will go on parallelly. I think those are the things that are becoming clear, and it is an assertive, confident, as I say, on a high party that is striking those notes of, being in power for the next 30, 40 years.
That seems to be it. We also saw the role of regional parties. I think they've got the message after Maharashtra. We saw Jagan going to the airport to welcome Prime Minister also. So there is always the fear of whether the ED or whether, just real politics at play. So Nilanjan, the real threat is to the regional parties now, really.
Yes, actually, at the national, executive in Hyderabad, Nija also pointed it out. They actually said, that this now phase of, politics of the BJP is going to be against, dynastic politics. Now, this is a very, very peculiar paradox. When we talk about dynasties and, political dynasties, BJP has been campaigning against it for the last 8 years. Now, the BJP itself is not spared of dynastic families, the people who are, in parliament or in public positions because somebody in their family is connected. There have been several studies done, on the previous Lok Sabha and even on this Lok Sabha, which says that almost 50%, if not more than the members of Lok Sabha are people who have been in political families. Look at the Union Cabinet, for instance. There are several members of the Union Cabinet who were all preceded by either the father or maybe somebody else within the family, if you actually find. Yet somehow the BJP is able to, and also the same case with the RSS. Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, his father was also in the RSS. There is another, deputy, Sarkaria, Mr. I'm just, the name has just slipped off my mind. There has been traditions within the Parivar, within the RSS and the Sangh Parivar also. So, but it's very clever positioning because the leadership is not dynastic. So that is how they are able to ward it off. Now you can say that just by the fact that the leadership is not dynastic, we are completely spared of the charge of following the dynastic principle. I do not know how much of this sticks, but that is what the BJP simply, projects. The problem which I see for the BJP, not in 24, but maybe slightly beyond.
I'm going to take a break and come back, and we're going to go back to this, what Nilanjan is saying. So hold that thought. We'll go take a quick break. Hello and welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We're here discussing the next 3-4 decades. They're going to belong to the BJP, but what kind of governance model are we going to see? Nilanjan, you had something to say?
Yeah, what I was saying is that the BJP has actually, I also agree that the Congress threat does not seem to be working in the minds of the BJP anymore. They think that the Congress has been, settled. It's a gone thing, that Rajasthan, I also agree with Nija. That was my first reaction after the, horrible crime in Udaipur, that Rajasthan, the campaign is over for the Congress. That two people who are actually going to suffer the most are possibly Sachin Pilot and Vasundhara Raje. Their whatever aspirations and hopes that they had, have completely been quashed with the terrible crime in Udaipur. So regional parties are definitely being targeted. One of them, the Thakres, have been settled, sorted out. The next target is KCR. There will be others also who will be taken up one by one. Party-wise, I see, that the problem for the BJP in the long run for the 30-40 agenda is not from the Congress at the moment, at least, and the Congress does something dramatic, or from the regional parties also, because at some point or the other, this entire dynastic principle might really become, work in the favor of the BJP, even in states. But I think that the BJP is genuinely worried about the possibility of Aam Aadmi Party and Arvind Kejriwal becoming a national phenomenon. We have to see what happens in the elections this winter in Himachal Pradesh and Gujarat. To what extent is the Aam Aadmi Party successful in these states? That is going to be pointed to the future challenge for the BJP, where it is going to come from. There is another particular issue, when
let me bring in Sandeep also, then we'll come back to
just one point, which others I'll forget. One point which we keep on talking about that the BJP has to address. I know I talked about the political imperative and the governance imperative. I constantly feel that the concept of Bharat, which is there in the mind of the entire Sangh Parivar, be it articulated in Mr. Mohan Bhagwat's speeches or his interventions or even in the resolutions, the concept of Bharat is very much North and Western India. It does not really go down into Southern India. It does not include. That has to change. It is a different thing going out, reaching and wooing out people. But when you talk about painting, for instance, painting Islam, you talk about it, 1200 saal ki gulami, you are completely disregarding the fact that there has been a long history of Islam in Southern India, preceding it coming to North India. So essentially, I think, there is a civilizational problem with Southern India. I would definitely like to hear the comments of, my other panelists, especially Sandeep, because he now also happens to be getting a lot of flavor from Southern India, having moved to that part and spending time there. So it will be good to hear others also.
BJP doesn't have the same appeal in the South and is more than a language thing, Sandeep.
See, that's where I think, again, people underestimate BJP and look at it in very plain black and white. I don't think BJP, whatever they've succeeded, they would have succeeded. That's a change which Modi has brought about if they had worked with a very, very, a single template. They have managed to recalibrate or change it. Just Northeast is a great example. They don't go on and speak of the same rhetoric which they're speaking in the Hindi heartland, what they do in the Northeast. So they will go on modifying some of the Bengal. It backfired for a variety of reasons. We'll get to that in some other show of yours. Even the South, I don't think, they have got the act together as yet, but they are not going to try the same formula when they penetrate south. They have that flexibility today in their system, and especially with people, that's the difference between having people like Modi at the top, who we might call the more pragmatic or they're more politically savvy to recalibrate some of that. Coming back to a couple of other points, I would like to, rather than have more. One is Neeta's point about regional party. I think Shiv Sena was not a slaying of a regional party. Shiv Sena was also a slaying of a Hindutva party, because they don't want, the earlier point which I made, they didn't want the Hindu votes in Maharashtra to be split anymore there. So it was there. Whereas when you come down south, that is where your regional party, the regional chauvinism, which say a KCR is trying to assert or a DMK is trying to assert, those will be a bigger issue apart from the dynastic front. So those are things they will have to tackle there. Secondly, you made this remark about ED, etc. I think that's again a very exaggerated comment, because what has changed in ED today? Either you are saying that yes, people are seeing ED as a very serious threat. The ED is clearly moving towards closure and action, and that is what's making people nervous. Or, I think it's just a bogey which people are putting out there. Now, finally, coming to this whole dynastic issue, I again don't buy the kind of argument which Nilanjan was saying, so-and-so is the son of so-and-so. That's not the point. Will BJP ever be able to say, like Uddhav Thackeray, aap Bala Saheb ka bete ko aap nikal rahe ho? Or somebody else says, without Gandhi's Congress cannot exist. That is the difference. My father was a chartered accountant. I'm a chartered accountant. My father could have been a politician. I'm a politician. That's a different issue. You have chartered accountant firm, if I were to stick to that analogy. You have firms like Pricewaterhouse or Ernst & Young, where the father and son may have both worked, but that doesn't guarantee that the son is going to inherit and be the topmost thing. Whereas there are family-owned firms, where it is always known that, it is somebody from the family. As long as there is somebody, if there is no one, then the family will go somewhere else. They will inherit. So that's the distinction which BJP is going to assert, especially with some of these dynastic parties. So in Tamil Nadu, you're seeing, even before I think the heir apparent Stalin's son is already being groomed. And so is it the case in KCR's Telangana. So that is what they're going to harp upon when they're talking of dynastic parties. And unfortunately, the regional parties are strengthening BJP's case by going precisely on that route and cutting out. And that's where the lesson for Maharashtra should be for all dynastic parties is that, which a lot of you have highlighted, that, you cannot take things for granted, and people within the party will no longer take it, given that, only the family can rule. So those are points which I think we cannot wish away. They have been very perceptive in picking up some of these elements.
I agree. In fact, the lesson really is, just like there can be a Shiv Sena without a Thackeray, there may be a Congress without the Gandhis. So that's a good lesson taken away from Maharashtra. Neerja.
I think it's early days yet to say that there can be a Shiv Sena without the Thackerays, because the split has taken place in the assembly. Whether that split gets translated into the organization outside with the Shiv Senics and the supporters of the Shiv Sena remains to be seen. Of course, Uddhav Thackeray is on the back foot. He's not well himself. His second rung has gone to the other side. He'll need energy and drive and, complete, hitting the streets to be able to galvanize the party. And, what the others have also said, the BJP is so quick to course correct. Here was Fadnavis to be the chief minister, and suddenly overnight you have Shinde becoming the chief minister and Fadnavis the deputy chief minister. I think they got a sense that there was sympathy brewing for Uddhav Thackeray, because Shinde was seen to be bringing down the government of Shiv Sena and putting in its place a government of BJP, which didn't go down very well. So they immediately course corrected. And I think that is what the BJP is very adept at. They don't take time at all to do that. But so I would say, yes, let's see how Maharashtra pans out. But, the two things that the opposition has, or I would say opposition has in its hand, the caste factor as a counter, as well as sub-nationalism. The Marathi sentiment or the Bengal sentiment vis-a-vis the outsiders coming in, which Mamata very subtly played in West Bengal and got the benefit of. But what the opposition has not come to terms with and does not know how to grapple with is the Hindu psyche. What I say, the Hinduization, increasing Hinduization of the Hindus, this desire to, undo the wrongs of 800 years. And somewhere this thing that's captured their mind. So I think the counter narrative by the opposition is something they will have to come to grips with. And Narendra Modi, on the other hand, is not one issue that he's flagging. It's a cocktail that's very heady. It's Hindutva, of course, and they continue with it. It's nationalism, national security. It is, social welfareism. It's a strong leader at the helm of it. It is caste. The way they are playing at the caste angle, the lower caste, now the Pasmanda Muslim, the way the tribal, Priya, that Draupadi Murmu card is a very potent card that they have played, because it will help them in the Hindi heartland states and the west of India, where in 7 to 8 states, tribals have a concentration. They make a difference to a lot of seats. So I think they're moving, it's amazing, the thinking in their ranks of staying one step ahead of the game. But somewhere I think the opposition, we keep saying that on your program, somewhere the opposition really needs to knuckle down to what is going to be its counter narrative. I don't think they're clear on it at all.
Not at all. Even at this point when, you can see the writing on the wall, but the opposition doesn't have a cohesive strategy at all. But on that note, thank you so much for this conversation, and we'll see you again same time next week.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.